That's our protagonist over there. He was dealing in high-quality goods when he suddenly reappeared in another world, being one of the few who doesn't lose his cool in the process. Everyone else who arrives gets devouring by this enormous wolf. But don't worry, because our prota had his tricks up his sleeve. So he survives and is now going to form his harem of waifus to accompany him around the world. I mean, who wouldn't want to be with the strongest guy around? But wait, how did we end up here? Let me tell you. And yes, our dear merchant was chosen to be the hero of that place, which is pretty unusual because in his normal world there were already talking beasts, basically from one ice guy to another. The thing is, when he's asked to show his skills, he has level 1 and basic common skills, which disappoints everyone because they'd rather he had lost a limb than be completely useless. In contrast, the neighboring summoning brings out a super handsome blonde who thinks he's the best of all, but of course, he has stats of 999, an incredible level, and they quickly forget about our prota. Feeling abandoned, the prota decides to ask the king to send him back to his world since they've already found the hero they needed. The king apologizes for not being able to grant his request, as the gate he came through has been closed and cannot be reopened. The only thing they can do for him is to expel him from the capital and send him to the forest so he can have a home and live in peace. Yes, they also give him money, food, and everything he needs. The detail is that when he's in the cart, he realizes that a demi-human is driving it. He asks if it's out of obligation or simply because he wants to which he replies that in this world demi-humans and humans get along well, which makes him quite happy because in his world, these creatures are viewed as scum and pests. The thing is, once he arrives, the lizard tells him to be careful because the Delavisa forest is considered the most dangerous, as it houses the vanguard of the Dark King's army. In other words, the prota was sent there to be silenced and to prevent it from being revealed that the king summoned a weak person who cannot be returned to his world. However, Benaza starts checking the inventory, pulls out a sword that is pretty bad but at least would be useful for defense. At that moment, some slimes appear and he quickly attacks them. Despite his weapon already being damaged, something unexpected happens. He levels up to level 2, but all his attributes become infinite. A voice assistant appears and tells him he has unlocked all spells and can use them however he wants. Additionally, the inventory given by the king had a spell that attracted enemies, so the prota himself can deactivate it. Doing so, he doesn't sense any enemy presence but does feel a malignant aura in the forest, with gases and poison that could eliminate anyone. But here the voice says, "My friend, you can also purify this." The prota, knowing it will take a lot of energy, agrees as this area will be his home. After using his enormous magic, the news seems to reach the king, where it was noted that a divine magic, only usable by elite knights, has been used in the world. And well, the king says, "Wow, amazing, it must be the super handsome hero who appeared." But the guard says, "No, my king, the magic is coming from the Delavisa forest," meaning the opposite side of where the handsome guy was. And so, both the old man and the princess are surprised, as at that moment, the prota was the only one heading there. As Benaza wishes to live better in the capital, he uses a transformation ability. At first, being the curious guy he is, he uses a waifu skin, yes, a really hot skin, which he decides to save for another time, ending up with a hot daddy skin and uses teleportation, a super powerful ability only elites use. He arrives at the capital and, to make money, joins the guild, where he sees a girl asking to be escorted to the forest where he was. When trying to help her, a group of waifus intervenes, as it's impossible for such a weak person to take a girl to such a dangerous place. After convincing them that he can use teleportation to reach the forest, they apologize for treating him so badly. The thing is, the girl asks how it's possible that the malignant aura of the forest and all the monsters have disappeared. A demon warning pops up for the prota, and these girls prepare to attack the girl, who reveals her identity as one of the 4 infernal under the Demon King's command. She is Fenris, the demonic wolf. The girls fall under the weakening spell. Benaza decides that the best option is to stay and fight, sending everyone else back to the guild, where his only chance of winning is to spam all his spells like there's no tomorrow. If you want to know the name of the anime, it will appear during the video, so comment the minute it appears and maybe a tremendous furry will show up in your room. While spamming spells like crazy, Fenris tries to slash him with her claws. She also uses magic, but the prota employs a powerful gravity spell, making it impossible for her to move no matter how hard she tries. She attempts to cast spells, but the prota's ability nullifies any enemy magic. As Benaza contemplates how to stop her, the voice recommends subjugation, an ability that allows him to alter people's thoughts and use them at his will. He doesn't want to do that, as it's something he despises from his world and is against. However, luckily for him, Fenris runs out of magic and decides to surrender, as it's the first time someone is more powerful than her. She transforms and bam, she's a totally amazing furry with an incredible backstory. The prota is obviously impressed by her assets, but being the gentleman he is, covers her with his cloak and gives her some clothes she might use later later, she passes out, and since he lives in that area, he sets up camp. When she wakes up, she realizes he not only left her clothes, but also used healing magic on her to restore her powers to full capacity. She thanks him for not having eliminated her and tells him he's the first human she's seen as so powerful. She thought all humans were fragile, but after being defeated by him, she swears she will never harm humans again. What she asks is to travel by his side because wolves are very solitary, and when they find someone more powerful than themselves, it is their duty to accompany them forever. The Proto initially refuses, but after she stays there trying to persuade him, she eventually achieves her goal and becomes his travel companion. Banaza reveals the truth and shows his real appearance, to which she promises to keep everything a secret. On the other hand, the blonde hero is fuming because when he went to fight a part of the demonic army, all his men under his command were eliminated. The knight responds with the truth, mentioning that the prince was always in the rear and never attacked, just kept running away. And of course, the blonde keeps training but never levels up and has no skills. The next day, Banaza and Fenris arrive in the capital. On the way, a merchant calls Fenris Miss, which amazes her with the treatment. The Proto mentions that they'll probably think they're married, which wouldn't be a bad idea, as they could go unnoticed in several places. She obviously loves the idea and agrees to be his wife. Even though it's a small lie for him, the waifu truly accepts being his woman. At the guild, an important mission comes up. A group of psychos are causing chaos to the north, the same creatures that destroyed the hero's army. Since no one wants to take the mission, Fenris decides she will handle it herself. The Proto, not wanting to let her do this alone, accompanies her to test various magical abilities. They arrive at a house provided by the guild where they can stay and hunt the beasts. Suddenly, they hear screams. When they reach the scene, they see that the girls the Proto saved when he found Fenris are being attacked by the psychos. With Fenris's and his help, they are saved once more. The thing is, the Proto introduces Fenris as his companion, which makes her sad and so angry that when this bear tries to eliminate her, her simple gaze paralyzes it, to the point where they end up taking it in as a pet. The guild girls can't believe the Proto's power, so they ask him to lead them in battle. Fenris gets jealous, and he tells the truth, introducing the little wolf as his wife. For some, this might have been a disappointment since they wanted something more with him, but for Fenris, hearing him call her his wife in front of everyone makes her so happy that she accepts him training and leading other women, as she is his only wife, and there's no problem with that. But now, the problem is that the Demon King has learned that Fenris failed and her army was wiped out, as well as that a human purified the entire forest and eliminated several demons. Therefore, he orders that this person be captured and brought to his chambers. The training of the knights had begun. The blonde girl had to face a huge boar, but as soon as it showed up, it attacked her, causing her to flee. Her friends tried to help, but look at this arrow by Blyery. It looks like a toy. Damn it, the training was a complete joke. However, the Proto has faith that the girls will improve. Since he now has money, he bought the house that the guild had rented for him and is now providing accommodation for all the girls. Fenris then calls them for lunch, revealing that her eating style is quite peculiar. It's raw food, but what was the Proto expecting? A buffet? She's a total wolf. Anyway, the Proto starts cooking with the blonde, which makes Fenris jealous since she is his wife and another woman cooks better than her. Even after tasting the food, Fenris is completely enamored with the dishes. Having completed the boar hunting mission, when they return to the guild, everyone is murmuring that the Proto is a powerhouse and he starts to gain recognition in the city. Even the guild leader mentions that the king wants to hire him to join the hero's army as an honorary knight, but he doesn't care because since he's with Fenris, he now wants to live peacefully and be an ordinary adventurer. As they leave, he notices his wife is all battered and covered in dust. She says nothing serious happened, but the reality is she enrolled in cooking classes and ended up making the place explode with her magic. On the other hand, the hero, along with his harem, learns about a powerful adventurer and asks one of his girls to take him to their chambers to make him his right-hand man. So they keep sending people from the castle to recruit Banaza, but he keeps refusing to work with them. During further training, Banaza notices that the dark-skinned girl helps in the garden because, yes, before being a warrior, she worked on a farm. The archer remains pathetic, and the mage runs out of magic after casting a spell. Banaza gives her a ring he made to increase her magical power, but Fenris warns her not to put the ring on her ring finger. At the same time, the wolf realizes that the blonde was supposedly in trouble, so she defeats the beast herself and glares at her with hatred, saying she's now capable of dealing with such beasts and was just pretending to be weak to get her husband's attention. Fenris senses someone's presence but decides to ignore it for now. That night, after preparing a great buffet for everyone, she reveals she took cooking classes. But since the presence is getting closer, Fenris is surprised. It turns out this amazing furry is Uluminas, a general of the demonic army. The Nico finds out that Fenris, the most feared of all, is married and no longer part of the army, now an enemy. Additionally, upon analyzing the Proto, she doesn't detect any remarkable magic, but when he reveals he purified the forest, the Nico mentions that due to that purification, Fenris's brother ceased to exist. The Proto is shocked, and the wolf says she knew about it but wouldn't mourn her brother's death, as his incompetence led to his defeat. Curious about Banaza's power, the Nico challenges him to a duel, where she makes a dirty move that puts Fenris in danger with a surprise attack. This angers the Proto, who casts a powerful spell that makes her surrender quickly. However, she doesn't stay idle, and the next morning arrives with an army of dragons. Any human would be scared, but the Proto is thrilled to see dragons for the first time. But excitement aside, since the Nico has clear intentions to attack him, he uses another powerful spell to make her look ridiculous, which the Dark King witnesses and decides to set a plan into motion. After the unexpected visit from the demonic Nico, Banaza decides to reinforce their home with a magical shield, which will activate a signal if a demon steps into their territory. Meanwhile, the girls are still impressed by the dark-skinned girl, as she earned the title of Dragon Slayer with the help of the protagonist. This completely depresses Bali Rosa, as she had wanted that title to enhance her noble family's reputation once again. Suddenly, an unexpected person appears, a figure resembling an elf who asks if Banaza lives nearby. When told that she does, he inquires about her exact location. The figure is actually looking for the protagonist's wife, who must be a demon. She threatens him with her sword and firmly demands that he leave, stating that if a demon is seeking someone who no longer works with them, it must be an enemy. The figure smiles and merely says he wanted to talk, but as he leaves, the protagonist and Fenris appear, frightened, mentioning that a demon with the name of the Demon King has just arrived. At that moment, the blonde girl suffers a drop in blood pressure because she had threatened the King of Darkness with her fragile sword as if it were nothing. The next day, Gozel returns to visit, this time to meet with Fenris and the protagonist. The blonde girl remains frozen at the sight of the Demon King, but she still joins the meeting to discuss an important topic. Gozel's reason for visiting is to recruit the protagonist, who obviously refuses. Gozel then explains that for the past 500 years, demons and humans have been at odds, but he does not wish to rule humanity. He simply wants peace and to protect his own. The problem is that humans always seek trouble, so he prefers to have someone as powerful as the protagonist on his side rather than as an enemy. Banaza tells him, "Buddy, I'm not joining anyone, so you can rest easy." Despite Gozel's attempts to intimidate him, the protagonist remains unfazed, which makes Gozel laugh and realize that this guy has guts. What impressed him the most was that the blonde girl beside him didn't flinch at all, but that was because she was unconscious with her eyes open. Due to this, Gozel falls in love with the human and begins visiting Bali Rosa every day with the intention of wooing her. However, his visits cause trouble for Banaza, as a spy from the king reports that Banaza spends time with a demonic figure. The princess, thinking things through, surmises that they might be trying to recruit him, and that he simply refuses, while the demon continues to bother them just like they do. Since the king thinks like an idiot, he decides the best course of action is to confront the protagonist. So, the hero, accompanied by an army, visits him and threatens to eliminate him if they do not join them. Banaza does not want to get his wife into trouble. The girls accompanying him mention that now that they have lived with the demons, they see them differently and believe it is not right to fight them unless absolutely necessary, as sometimes the worst enemies are found within their own ranks, like this dumb blonde. Hearing this, the protagonist uses his teleportation magic and vanishes with the house, the harvest, and the animals. The soldiers are left stunned, but when Gozel arrives and sees that the house is gone and finds a dumb blonde and kingdom soldiers, he blames them for letting his future wife escape. Furious, he unleashes hell and orders the demons to attack the kingdom with no mercy whatsoever. The capital kingdom is under attack by demons, reaching a critical point where once again the hero hides in his quarters. Realizing that they will use purification magic, Gozel calls for a temporary retreat. The kingdom is purified, but there's a major problem. Now all the mages of the kingdom, including the king, are exhausted and will remain bedridden for 3 months. The purification will only last around 2 months, meaning they're screwed for 3 hectares of goodness. Meanwhile, the protagonist is chilling at home with his wife and the girls, contemplating what business ventures to start. He wants to sell dragon-scale weapons and high-quality demonic materials. The dark-skinned girl plans to sell fruits from her harvests, and the country girl wants to train horses for rental. The other two are the extras, lacking standout skills to help around the house. Back in the kingdom, the princess, recognizing the gravity of their situation, takes over her father's role and orders the exile of the so-called hero who's useless. She also calls for the oracle to give them a clue on how to save everyone. The hero, now reduced to a mere petty adventurer, seeks revenge for all the humiliation he's endured. But that can wait because Fenris and Banaza are on a lovely date where the furry girl is very happy with her partner. They go out to eat, try on hats, and and in the end, he gifts her a beautiful jewel that matches her personality and hair. This makes the girls at home both happy and jealous, not knowing that the furry girl sleeps cuddled up with the protagonist. Anyway, the dumb blonde beats up some guards and sneaks into the kingdom's treasure room, looking for a weapon to help him defeat the Demon King. There, he hears a voice calling him and offering to grant his wishes in exchange for freeing a sword of dubious origin. Out of the sword comes a beautiful ELF, claiming to be a genie who will grant 3 wishes. The catch is that as the hero makes his wishes, the princess and everyone in the kingdom receive a necklace. This is because the genie the idiot freed has a small problem. Some time ago, when they tried to destroy the Demon King, they summoned this woman who granted wishes in exchange for a large number of human lives, marked by the necklace. Once the wishes were granted, the necklace would destroy the person. The only way to survive is to seal the genie, just as they did back then. The oracle says the only way to save themselves is to find the real hero, who is Banaza, located in the west. Since they can't leave the kingdom unguarded, the princess decides to go personally to find him and try to convince him. However, while Banaza is doing business with Fenris and Balirosa, the genie appears out of nowhere to fulfill her first wish, which is to eliminate the person who humiliated the hero. The problem is that when the genie attacks, Fenris intervenes and receives a fatal blow that cannot be healed by any of the protagonist's skills. The genie uses a divided attack, which is absorbed and learned by the protagonist. For the first time, the young man who hates fighting changes his way of thinking and swores Tio, make the person who dared Tio hurt his wife pay. The genie was terrified to see the protagonist acting like nothing had happened, but she should be, as the guy begins to have memories of his wolf girl, making her loss even more painful. Unconsciously, he uses a time rewinding ability and Fenris recovers. But because he did it unconsciously, he begins Tio beat the genie repeatedly, to the point where she realizes he's a rival she can't defeat, as he possesses infinite abilities, and not even a supreme genie could stop them. The waifu starts apologizing and surrenders, but the protagonist grabs her by the neck. Fenris is excited because her partner is fighting for her, but she remembers that he once said he wouldn't kill anyone who surrendered, as everyone deserves forgiveness, plus he hates fighting. The waifu then stops him, and he wakes up to realize that his wolf girl is okay. The princess has just arrived in the area with the help of the mages, who are now out of magic but left her nearby to search for the hero. Meanwhile, the hero was hiding, but something else was sealed in that place. A mage takes over this hottie's body and changes his appearance to a more gothic one. The waifu had planned to take revenge on everyone who sealed her, and since the blonde wanted power, she transforms him into a beast for transportation to chase the princess, who recently used teleportation. When the genie wakes up, we learn her name, Haya, a supreme genie with godlike abilities. She's frightened, thinking she'll be beaten again, but the protagonist reassures her that since Fenris is alive, she is too, since they can't send her back to the kingdom because he already knows everything that happened. Because when the guy absorbed the elf's abilities, he learned all her powers, including mind reading and seeing everything like a movie. At this point, as he wants to restore the city by reversing time, the genie tells him not to do it. She agrees to live with them because Fenris had the idea to recruit her, but she asks the protagonist not to use that ability. Altering time could cause many people around him to suffer things that shouldn't have happened, as not controlling his magic and having infinite power might have altered some things. So, she asks him to let her use those powers from now on whenever he asks. Now, with a genie at home, the girls feel intimidated. First, the Demon King, and now an OP genie. However, Fenris, knowing that the protagonist now has the ability to try to return to his world, feels sad. She asks him to take her with him, but he says he won't, as she would have a very bad life in the other world. Moreover, when he saw her lying there, badly injured, he felt heartbroken. So, he formally asks her to be his wife. This leads them to spend a passionate night together, but it's interrupted with the new member in the house. Household chores have become easier. Her magic makes laundry and cleaning very quick, and she also helps Fenris in the kitchen, which makes the others seem like a burden. So, they decide to focus on what they can do best. Suddenly, a horse appears out of nowhere. This strange beast starts damaging the garden, but thanks to Bailarai, they manage to control it. The beautiful horse tamer thinks it would be best to expand the land even more, buying additional hectares to create a profitable business, both for animals and food sales. At that moment, Fenris and Banaza are dealing with their usual vendor, while the princess is in the city looking for them. Suddenly, a terrible cloud appears above them, and a seal breaks, causing a huge beast to descend from the sky. Banaza, witnessing the event, decides to help the citizens. Along the way, Haya appears and mentions that she came as fast as she could because she sensed the presence of an evil witch. The waifu on the beast is an ancient, powerful witch, the most broken in the kingdom. After using dark magic, became addicted to it and was consumed by darkness. Knowing it's her fault that this woman is back, as they were both sealed killed in the same place, Haya asks the protagonist's permission to deal with her. The protagonist agrees, saying that the priority is to save the civilians and defeat the witch. Haya, with a beautiful smile, arrives to protect the princess. The witch's attacks have no effect on her, as the magic of that world is null for her. The woman uses magic to make the beast even larger, but suddenly everything is cancelled because the protagonist used nullifying magic, thinking it was a huge problem for Haya. The genius apologizes for taking so long to defeat her, but quickly with a snap of her fingers, she absorbs and devours the witch with the intention of teaching her how to use her powers in a mental prison, so that she can later support the protagonist, an idea that Fenris thinks is very good. The blonde returns to his normal state and is taken to prison, while the princess once again seeks the protagonist's support. However, he mentions that he is already married, has a good life, and doesn't want to get involved in problems that don't interest him. When he returns home, the girls tell him about the idea of buying the land. Since it was a lot of money, the protagonist agrees to help them, but they will need to pay him 30% of the profits they make. It was actually going to be free for them, but since they didn't want to feel like freeloaders, they offered to pay that amount. They start to expand, and Haya offers her help to cultivate even faster. It is here that the little mage mentions that she will return to study magic and even become a teacher at a nearby school, as the skills the protagonist has taught her are unique, and that's why she was accepted. Plus, seeing Haya helping with magic on the farm will greatly improve her as a mage. In a scene change, we see Bali Rosa at a wedding. Yes, she is the future wife of the Demon King, but of course, it's just a nightmare that has been tormenting her. Why would she dream about someone she despises? She asks Fenris if she has experienced something similar, and Fenris responds that it happens when someone is in love. Naturally, the others get involved in the gossip and confirm that the Demon King's visit was meant for her. But since she always runs away, they never get a chance to talk. Fenris then decides to share how she fell in love with the protagonist, but the conversation takes a weird turn where the girls think she was talking about the protagonist's horn or something similar. Anyway, the kingdom's princess received a big wad of cash from the protagonist. The catch is that the coins he gave them to rebuild the city are special gold coins that were given to heroes. The only other person who could have those besides the blonde is the guy they sent to the forest. Deducing this, she now understands why Benaza doesn't want to help them. Oich, I didn't mention, both Benaza and Fenris changed their names. The protagonist is now Theo and she is Riss, but we'll keep calling them as we did before. A guard then arrives, reporting that the blonde and his servant have escaped from prison and once again stole things from the vault. Damn, isn't there anyone guarding that vault? The idiot hides in the forest with his waifu, where all they stole was a bottomless bag. Inside it was a chest containing a magical shovel, which allowed them to hide at a great depth. The problem now is that they can't escape from there. On the other hand, the Nico asks Gozel if it's time to attack, but he mentions they can't do that. One reason is that if they go now with the purification, many of them will fall in battle, and he doesn't want losses in his village because he really doesn't want to fight. However, if they manage to get to Benaza, he could purify everyone if he wanted. This was overheard by the demonic Gothic Bayonet, who takes the information to Gozel's brother. He thinks very differently from his brother. While one wants to remain in peace, the other wants to throw down with anyone. So, he decides to stage a coup, become the Demon King, and for all. By the way, Benaza was in the city with his waifu on a stroll when Haya appears to warn him that someone of great power was heading his way. The protagonist tells her not to worry, as this is his buddy. It was Gozel who had finally found them. While they talk, Gozel tries to convince them to join him, with the blonde mentioning that he only wants to take away what they already have, which is their beautiful peace. The problem is that he says if demons lived with humans, the humans would perish. There are demons like Fenris who can control their rage and the urge to destroy, but others, no matter how hard they try, have that inner toxicity that would end humanity. That's why the forest was dangerous, and no one could approach it. This leaves everyone thinking because the wall between humans and demons is quite clear, leaving only an endless war as their apparent future. Lately, Fenris has improved in the kitchen. She explains that after finishing her cooking classes, she visited her teacher at a new academy to thank her for the engagement ring she now has, as her husband is thrilled with the food she prepares. Therefore, the woman taught her a family recipe that the children would enjoy, which surprises the girls since they'll soon have to get used to the idea of these two possibly having little wolf pups. Anyway, there's a knock at the door, and it's the princess, who apologizes to the protagonist for putting him through a very difficult time in his life, knowing that his identity is Benaza. She asks to speak with him alone, but he agrees only if Fenris stays, as she is his wife and should hear everything the princess has to say. The waifu takes out a map showing the positions of all the kingdom's forces. This confidential information shouldn't be shown to anyone, but in a gesture of trust, she decides to reveal her plan. It turns out that since the demons will attack in a few days, she needs his support, not to defend the kingdom, but to help the cities and villages that will suffer severe damage from the war. She is aware that the protagonist hates war and fighting, but she also knows he would do anything to protect innocent people who won't have the privilege of being protected by the kingdom. Not because the princess doesn't want to, but because there won't be enough men to protect so many regions. Additionally, she wants to reach the throne with his help to overthrow the current king, blaming him for putting a false hero in place and sending the real hero to a remote location where he might have died. Banaza doesn't give an immediate answer but mentions he will think things over calmly. Meanwhile, the blonde and his servant are still escaping, having a brief romantic moment where the waifu asks why he continues to escape with her, since she's a burden and always gets exhausted. But who would abandon such a good plot? Anyway, the two are captured by a spider that turns out to be owned by the demonic Butt Queen. As they are being kidnapped, the villages are evacuating because the demons are already arriving. Luckily, they are saved by a mysterious man accompanied by a silver wolf. Banaza, in a good disguise, stops the demons and warns that he doesn't wish to fight, but this massively muscular Cyclops considers himself powerful and calls the wolf a weak traitor. Hearing this, Fenris gets angry and asks her husband for permission to give the beast a good beating but without killing it. She now controls her power and only inflicts severe injuries, which are then healed by the protagonist. The Cyclops doesn't understand why he is being healed but sees that the protagonist wants to be peaceful while also being deadly if they try to fight. Because of this, the enemy troops are driven away by Banaza, and this information reaches the princess, who is pleased because the protagonist accepted her request in his own way. Meanwhile, the Bayonet and Gozel's brother are staging a coup and will use the two captured humans for a ritual to summon something. Gozel learns of this plan and quickly moves to restore order, as he had never ordered the demons to attack. As the king was on his way, Eulimenes tried to convince Gozel's followers not to abandon him. How could they, who had been saved by their demon king, now want to betray him? However, this wasn't enough, as they argued that the king had been acting strangely and spending every day with humans. Once they met with Gozel's brother and agreed to a duel for the throne, Eulimenes attempted to stop them but was gravely injured. Gozel arrived to save her with one of his servants. At this point, the king realized that they simply wanted to clash with humanity while he was trying to keep everyone alive. If they were going to fight, they would likely encounter Banaza, who would purify them alone. However, they didn't know this, so instead of fighting his brother, the king pretended to prepare for battle by increasing his power but ultimately only handed over his position. He gave the bracelet that symbolizes being the king and, as a final act, kicked him for hurting Eulimenes. This way, the king left his post and went to Banaza's house. As his only human friend, he asked Banaza if he could stay for a few days until they resolved the issue or found another place. Banaza and Fenris were fine with it, but the girls were really nervous. In the end, they all quickly agreed, with Bali Rosa being the only one who hesitated. But the good news is that now the protagonist has the most powerful demon in his house, one of the 4 most powerful generals as a wife, a supreme genius, and someone with infinite power. Essentially, they could handle a global war on their own. With Gozel's arrival, he tried to socialize with the girls, or rather help with their chores, but due to their fear, they wouldn't let him do anything. The protagonist was the only one who talked to him about his weapon sales and showed the pieces he had made from the dragon scales he defeated when they attacked him. Expecting Gozel to be annoyed, he was actually pleased, mentioning that he shouldn't feel bad about using those scales. On the contrary, they attacked him and he won, so he had the right to use the reward. This is where Eulimenes felt uneasy, as she noticed that the king seemed happier with humans than with his own kind. On the other hand, Fenris was worried about Bali Rosa, as the waifu appeared depressed. That night, they spoke with her and discovered that what bothered her was living with the enemy. Even though the guy was no longer the demon king and didn't plan to harm humans, he had been very cruel, making it painful to see his comrades crying for their families and friends. Moreover, she didn't fully trust him. Fenris mentioned that when they first met, his intention was to use them as food. So if she doesn't like the king, she should be the same. At that point, she realized that it wasn't necessary to be friends with everyone, just to accept and gradually warm up. Who knows if one day she might be in danger and the demon king would be the one to save her. So, the next day, she told them that she accepted them, but would not shake hands until they fully earned her trust. The new Dark King doesn't have a specific plan for his next attack. He just wants to go head-to-head with the humans, which isn't exactly pleasing to the demons. Without a plan, they don't know what the humans might do to defeat them. The Bayonet prefers that they analyze the situation, but the kid gives him a smack and orders him to prepare the army. However, that's where another problem arises. The strategic demons left the place when Ulmanas went off with Gozel, so the only thing they can do now is motivate the demons to launch their attack. And speaking of motivation, the protagonist gets a big kiss from Fenris since they both won a trip to the hot springs. However, the coupon was for a minimum of 3 people and a maximum of 15, so what was supposed to be a private date turned into a family trip. Fenris wasn't thrilled about all the girls coming along, but after hearing about the possible healing benefits and advantages of a good bath there, like increased fertility, she changes her mind and gets motivated to have kids with the protagonist that very day. Upon arrival, Fenris asks where the fertility hot spring is, and the woman gives her the map and mentions that they should keep the bath just for the 2 of them. As the girls head to the room, the dark-skinned beauty stumbles upon this buff dude who looks a lot like Gozel, but is actually his brother. He had come with Bayonet and the other demons to relax, have fun, and clear their minds for battle, although they had brought talismans to keep their malice in check. Gozel, Fenris, and Ulmanas notice the other demons, and they realize they need to keep an eye on them, though Fenris doesn't want anyone talking to them because it might ruin her husband's trip. Since everyone had different things to do, the protagonists go for a good bath, and Haya retreats into her mind to talk to the witch. The witch, wanting to see what the protagonists will do, tries to replicate the experience with her, which everyone obviously wanted to happen. However, the witch gets pressured and doesn't let Haya continue in her own mind, so she decides to go to an adult museum where she encounters the archer, who was also there to check out some adult stuff. While everyone is having fun, Bali Rosa realizes that Ulmanas is in love with Gozel, based on the way she talks to him and her desire for him to be the Demon King. She points it out, but the problem is that an unexpected beast attacks. Turns out that, since the demons were bored, they started a staged fight that ended up being real. Their collars broke, and the malice began to spill out. The stupid blonde had escaped from the demon's domain with some stolen jewels, one of which was a malice catalyst that buffs the demons but controls non-demons, causing them to wreak havoc. While the protagonist tries to prevent the building from collapsing, Fenris, Gozel, and Ulmanas climb to the roof to assess the situation, where Gozel's brother climbs up to challenge him to a duel. Beauregard unleashes attacks against Gozel, even trying to injure Ulmanas. However, while he defends her, Fenris destroys the crystal, causing the creature to disappear. Bali Rosa witnesses the whole situation, informs the protagonist of what happened, and suspects that Gozel has betrayed them. But the protagonist has full confidence in the Demon King, as he is a man of his word, and we see him saving the blonde's servant. While Ulmanas faces off against Bayonet, the Demon King is giving his brother a severe thrashing. Despite using a lot of malice, Gozel's brother can't inflict any damage on him. Yes, Gozel allows himself to be hit at times until he finally says, "My dude, this ends here," seals the malice, and without it, his power is gone. He's practically just another demon. This seal was learned to dethrone the previous king, a skill he learned from humans who were developing this magic to defeat them. Without powers, the hot spring women use talismans to bind the demons and teleport them to their demonic realm. All the civilians are saved, and the protagonist uses his powers to fix all the damage. Thus, all the workers thank them for their support. Now that they're free, it's time for a good bath, and finally, we get our juicy fan service. The waifus show off their good side. Haya mentions having had some alone time with a certain waifu, and well, the protagonist finally earns Gozel's complete trust. Gozel mentions he'll help the protagonist solve any issues humanity has to achieve peace. Finally, Fenris and Banaza get to be alone, where he promises to always be by her side, and they exchange some affectionate moments that are quite noticeable the next day. Anyway, everyone heads home. Bali Rosa becomes more friendly with Gozel, and they come up with many ideas for selling weapons, fruits, food, and sweets, and the princess is crowned as queen, with her father being hunted for all the bad decisions he made for his people, while the blonde and his servant will spend their lives on the run as thieves. But the most important thing is that Banaza now has a good life with his wolf girl. If you want more epic anime, comment the word waifu Farida, and I'll find another anime you might like.